Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is now about 8:04. Tonight is Tuesday, May 19th. We have a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We are in room 119, and we're also on GOTOMEETING virtual with the participants and some other commissioners. Tonight we have a public hearing, a couple of public hearings, continuations, and then a general meeting. So we're going to start off with the public hearing. The first item on the agenda is site plan application number 284B, special permit, land filling, excavation regrading application number 477, Town of Darien, Oxford School, 395 Mansfield Avenue. This is a continuation of last week's hearing. Is that right, last week's hearing?
Last week.
We had a couple open issues. A couple of things to finish up and wrap up. And Jeremy, why don't you just give us a quick introduction before we say anything?
Sure. Commission members, you may recall at the last public hearing there were a number of issues and questions brought up both by the commission members and via a neighbor who spoke at the public hearing. Since that time, you've received in your packets supplemental information submitted on behalf of the applicant in response to the comments last week. And in addition, so another email from a neighbor, and so we have asked Amy Samuelson on behalf of the applicant to run through a number of the outstanding issues from last week, and what we'll try to do to the best possible tonight is get through all the other issues other than stormwater management and continue to hold back that one issue for next week's hearing. But what we wanted to do was have the applicant try to address as many outstanding issues tonight as possible.
Why don't you just explain that the stormwater guy's mad?
Right. As a little background about stormwater, I did sit in on the meeting last Thursday between peer review engineer Craig Flaherty of Redness and Mead and Bill from Benish. And they spent well over an hour discussing the proposed stormwater management system, as well as Mr. Flaherty's concerns. And as we left the meeting, it was agreed that there'll be changes made, and they'll get those changes to Mr. Flaherty, and hopefully by this time next week, the applicant and Mr. Flaherty will have worked out very many of the issues, if not all of the issues. So in next week's packet, you'll see the revised drainage plan, and hopefully by then, Mr. Flaherty's comments as well. So that'll be next week.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Amy Samuelson, I think we're going to turn it over to you. Amy, you ready? You're up. There you go.
Yep, I'm all set. Sorry, I thought I unmuted.
Not a problem.
If you can just allow me to share my screen, I'll put a thank you. There we go. So thank you all. Once again, my name is Amy Samuelson, and on behalf of the architects, the SLAM Collaborative, I'm here to represent the school project for the building committee. Jeremy asked us to run through a few of the outstanding items, as he mentioned, and one of the items that I wanted to bring to your attention is a very new information. Less than a week ago, on Thursday the 14th, I believe, the building committee made a approval of a change that was presented to the phasing plan. So on the screen, you see the phasing plan that was presented in your packets, and previously the idea was to abate and demolish the south portion of the two front wings of the existing Oxridge Elementary School in order to fit the full construction of the new building. and allow the building to be built in one phase and turned over to the school in one phase. Since that time, we've run into a few other variables, not the least of which is COVID-19. And so we've proposed another phasing option. It also saves money for the town, and so it's a win-win, as it was put in the building committee meeting last Thursday. But this allows the new building to be built in two phases. As you can see on the screen, the main entrance and front portion, as well as all of the academic areas, classrooms and courtyard, will be built in phase one. The existing building can remain in place. So you can see on this new site plan that the loop of the new building will be built first in phase one. The existing building will remain in place all of next school year. Oops. And it will allow the students and the faculty to move back into the building in its full size. They will not be cramped in any way. In November, when the new construction starts, that's when the parking lot will be obstructed partially, and the construction managers will speak to that later in this meeting. But for opening of school and for the duration of the whole school year and into the following school year, the existing building will remain in place, and students will be able to be reintroduced back into the school and not feel like they're in the middle of a construction zone. So that seemed to be the best possible solution given today's concerns and climate for social distancing and comfort level of getting people back into the school, as well as for the budget of this project. It allows us to reduce the amount spent on the previous phase one. When that decision was made, it impacted the zoning table, and so that's why I brought it to your attention. I wanted to let you know that the lot coverage, we had previously asked for a variance for exceeding the allowable lot coverage. That lot coverage exceedance is now reduced. That will only be for approximately 1 year in time instead of 2 years of time. And the overage is only 2.7% over the allowable. So to that end, the ZBA has decided that it is not requiring a variance. So we're able to build the new building, and at the end of that, we'll have 18.7% coverage. So that was item one on the list, or two items on the list of things I wanted to review with you. This screen represents the event parking and areas where extra cars could be parked. So if I can ask Dr. Forshaw to describe this, if he's here. I'm not sure if I'm able to tell.
I'm here.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So just another run through, is that what you're looking for, Amy? Is that what's most helpful?
I think that's what Jeremy had asked for, is just a confirmation that you'd be able to accommodate additional cars and during special events.
With the new phasing plan?
Actually, at the end of construction.
Yes, so I think I mentioned last time that we've got an increased number of spaces here listed at 64 additional parking spaces, and that for events that were larger in scale, we do hire the police to help make sure that we're accommodating all those new visitors, but we should be fine to accommodate within this new parking scheme.
So just to clarify, the amount of extra parking spaces for events, I think is 65 spaces. Is that correct? Because it's 140, and I think at the events we said it would be maxed out at 205. So 205 minus 140, 65?
204, 64 spaces.
It's 204, not 205. Okay, that's right.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can I ask Luke a question?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, Luke, and I think this is because with the new phasing, as I read the plans, ELP will be delayed in, being one ELP in that location, right? They're currently in multiple locations, so we're not concerned while with the different phasing with the changes in parking, given this new configuration, given that there'll be less students because of the deferral of ELP fully entering the location.
That's right. ELP is, in this new scheme could be moved over by probably the April break of 2023, but I don't think that's a likely scenario given the disruption that would cause to bring ELP and teachers and students over. So I would anticipate most likely ELP would come to the site in full for the fall of 23.
Okay, and right, because our conversation last time, and right, the parking numbers we were looking at was sort of contemplating all of ELP with that staff and all of the K through 5 with that staff and the drop-offs and the bus variances between K through 5 versus ELP, which not the percentages of ELP receiving busing is different. And so I think the parking sort of calculus changes a bit with this new configuration. Do you agree with that?
I think for the enabling phase, it's easier,
Yes,
in that we just have that one building until 2023 effectively, and then we'll have the new site fully rendered for that fall of 23.
Yeah. So I think So I don't think we have to. I think we'll be okay during that longer time period, right? With the less people, even though there's less parking because of the.
Yeah, I think we'll be fine with this new enabling phase of parking.
Okay. I just wanted that all on the record so that parents could understand it and can look back to this and sort of get a full picture of what's going on.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Steve, could I inquire?
Sure you can. Go ahead there, George Riley.
Dr. Forshaw, if we could go back, thank you. I'm guessing, knowing how involved all we parents are, that this won't just be event parking. This will be daytime parking for school operations. Is that going to be manageable? And I'm particularly interested in whether the fire lanes, which also serve as bus lanes, and then just north of the buses will be the cars parking. Is all that sensible to you?
It is. In fact, this is an overall net increase of total spaces for daily operations. So for daily operations from the current site to where we're going, even considering the ELP increase that Ms. Gately's referenced, we're still having an increase of parking availability for families on our day-to-day operations. This overflow parking is really for the few major events that we've talked about in previous conversations. Our picnic, open house night, where we do have really strong family participation. So that's really what these, in addition to the, what's now just new net parking space of the new school, in addition to that, that's what these lines are indicating for those big events, which there are a few a year.
Okay. I mean, we all know how often parents like to be there during the day. I guess they aren't there for lunch anymore, but they're there for various programs and all that. But
which we love, and this model of the new school will definitely accommodate still that high level of engagement.
All right, good, thanks.
Question, Mike Galante, do you have anything you want to add to this, or are you good?
No, I'm good. We had chatted last time around the event parking in the evenings and in the daytime typical school day parking, and we're satisfied with the daytime school parking needs and the number of parking spaces provided. And in the evening for a special event, we understand that someone in cars will park in potentially the bus loop or potentially the parent drop-off. And the point someone made about, emergency vehicles, it's really up to the fire department what they want cleared and maintained all day long during a school day, for example. We made some recommendations for the bus loop to have no parking during the school day, but that's really up to the school district and the fire department to really determine if it should be no parking or no standing pretty much all during the school day on a typical day in the bus loop. We assume parents will park in the parent drop off during the school day.
Okay.
Not, not all day, but, for short visits or whatever it might be.
Okay.
Steve, can I bring up
Of course you can.
one point of clarification? When Amy mentioned earlier that the ZBA determined that a variance was no longer necessary, it was actually zoning officer David Keating who made that determination. Once we saw that the process had changed and the phasing had changed, and as Amy mentioned that the amount of time it's over on coverage was reduced almost by half, that determination was made by staff. So a letter of withdrawal was sent by the building committee, so that will not be going ahead tomorrow night with the ZBA.
And the memo's in the file.
And that memo is in the file posted to the town website.
From Keating to you.
That's correct.
Okay, great. And that last comment, just everyone knows, was Michael Galante of, I was so called Frederick Clark and Associates for a while, but I'll switch eventually.
That's okay. I've been saying that for 40 years.
You're not that old, Michael. What did you start at 15?
16. I had a birthday yesterday.
All right, Amy, back to you. Does anyone else have any questions on this one little topic? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. Amy, back to you. Next item.
Okay. Sure. So now I'm going to reintroduce Jessica Petro. She's the landscape architect that presented to you last week. And we have some additional information to share in landscape.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. For the record, Jessica Petro, landscape architect on the project. So we had some questions before about just tree protection and that process about engaging an arborist during the construction phase. And this is just some information regarding how we cover that within our documentation. We have a specifications section 015639, which is a section just devoted to temporary tree and plant protection. So that's issued within our specifications through SLAM. And then also on L101, which is our site demo and site preparation plan, that's where we show the highlighted trees for protection. This example graphic in the upper right is showing an elevation of plan of where and how we see protection of trees. So we generally try to go to the drip line of a tree, which is the arbitrary point, but it's one in which we know that we're protecting the majority of the tree's root area, root zone, or critical root area. And this is showing an individual protection of one tree. So when you have a wood line of trees, it at times, instead of doing individual trees, they'll just do an offset of construction fence on one edge. So this is just a graphic, and that's what's held in our documentation. And then within that specification, we have a pre-installation conference meeting on site with the construction manager as well as the arborist that they have hired. And we go over just what we see for protections and clarification about the arborist's responsibilities. And then you'll see on the rest of the slide just some general submittals that we look to receive that are covered within the specification of just an analysis of the tree health before construction starts, submittals on how they are going to do the construction fencing to preserve those trees, continuing monitoring during construction, and then if there were any conditions that need to be resolved, or if there was a safety issue of a broken limb, those things are maintained and documented.
Okay.
There also is a question regarding the perimeter fencing around the site. So the yellow lines that are on the exterior of our site are existing fencing of neighbors or adjacent parcels. So I've included
the number. So if you look at number 2, coming into the entry into the site, you'll see where the photo is taken below the number 2 graphic on the plan. So there are different types of materials of existing fencing. We have some stockade fences, we have some split rail fences. So there's different opportunities where we are meeting a stockade fence. Yes, thank you, Amy. We are tying into that fence instead of having a security fence right in front of an additional stockade fence. So the red lines indicate where we have included in our documentation a vinyl black coated chain link fence that surrounds the site. So that graphic on the upper left hand shows that graphic of the proposed fence. There's also some questions previously regarding the additional screen planting by the adjacent ELP playground. So this is just an existing conditions to show you where we have the split rail fence coming between our parcel and the neighbor's parcel to the east, and where there's existing 2 single gates and openings coming into the site. And then just some additional photos where you can see that there's upper canopy screening on some portions, as well as Amy was showing on image number 3, a thicker evergreen buffer in between the sites. So on the next slide, it'll show what we've held for documentation within 100% or the, P&Z documentation. So those green evergreen trees that we had shown in image 3 are along the eastern border, and they're the trees that are indicated with the dashed line for the canopy. So those are existing to remain, as well as we have evergreen trees, flowering trees. There's a legend on the left of the slide indicating those. And then upon hearing some concerns from the neighbor, we wanted to add those additional 2 trees that would be a larger deciduous shade tree, so you get that upper canopy screening for those neighbors.
Okay, Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
This is Steve Alvani speaking. I was going to say calling, so I was going to call her. Do any of the existing fencing that's on the property from other neighbors' properties, does that encroach on our site? Do any of those other fences ever have to be moved? And also, I guess it goes for bushes, like we're staring at bushes that look like they straddle the property line.
Mm-hmm. I will have to double check to verify the survey, but I do think there was a conflict of fencing, and any shrubs within those areas, we've been trying to maintain as many trees and shrubs along the property lines.
I'm sorry, Steve, which ones do you think straddle the property lines that may be an issue? Because I'm not seeing it, and I don't read the maps, I don't read the site plans as good as you do.
It's the ones we were just looking at on the Fernando property, for lack of a better word, and then the fencing that's by...
What number of property is that? Because I don't know which one is Fernando.
3 and 4 on the image you're staring at now.
So we think that fence and those, I don't see on 4 that in the corner. So we think those 4 in the corner are over the property line?
If you look on the other, yeah, you look on the next map where they were.
I'm looking at what's on the screen.
Correct, yeah. I just want to...
We think all these need to come out?
No.
Okay.
No, we're not taking out... We're not...
Well, I want to clear up the record because...
No, I just wanted... What I want to make sure is that if... In the case of the Diller property, if anybody remembers that, when
Can you talk about this property?
When they went and developed that property, some of the other neighbors encroached on town property. So
do we think this neighbor is encroaching on the town property?
We don't know. That's what Jessica just said.
The neighbor that wrote the letter?
Jessica just said just check the survey.
I'm asking a question.
What's the question?
I didn't hear the question. I think.
That's the neighbor who wrote the letter.
Yes,
So you want to check the survey to see if he's encroaching on town property.
them or other people.
So you're going to survey the whole property.
No, I
No,
didn't
we
say
don't
that.
serve it.
You can look at it when you're out in the field at the time.
I'm literally asking, are we going to survey the entire property or just this property line with the neighbor who wrote the letter?
Excuse me, this is Amy Samuelson. We do have a full survey of the entire property.
Okay, so can you then, let's just then clarify for what Steve's question is.
Sure. So I do believe that part of the split rail fence on the Fernando property, I think if that's their last name,
Francisco.
is encroaching on the school property. But it is planned to be replaced with the vinyl coated chain link fence for security reasons. So that's the current plan.
Okay.
None of the trees will be harmed. As you can see, Jessica's taking great care in protecting any existing trees and especially in that nice privacy that the evergreens provide.
I know there's existing property owner fences on other perimeters of the site. Have
Yes.
we also verified that those are not encroaching on town land? And will we be taking the same action?
We will
Michael?
look more carefully and very carefully to make sure that they are not, but it is not my understanding.
If we're doing it on one part of the property for one neighbor, we should be doing consistently for all the fences. Instead of everybody.
Absolutely. In any case where there's a question of where the fencing is located, we'll be analyzing it and assessing each section.
How are you determining if there's a question where the fences are located?
The survey will tell us, and it does tell us.
So that's my question. So you will be looking at the survey with respect to all of the pre-existing fences that align the property and that abut other properties.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mike Galante, can you put your microphone on mute?
Lee? Sure.
Yeah, thanks. Already, better. Okay, that's what exactly what Kara reiterated. We don't have to determine that now because some of this stuff's not going to be built till the fence may not go in till 2022 or 2023.
Right.
But you can take care of that in the field at the time. We just need to make sure people get notified.
Thank you. That's what we'll do.
Perfect. Okay, Jessica, you're on a roll before I cut you off, sorry.
It's okay. These are somewhat similar to what we've seen before. It's just trying to consolidate the idea of the additional screen plantings. The two additional images I incorporated were two native deciduous shrubs in the bottom right of this graphic, just talking about the additional layer of screening and privacy between the two parcels that we've indicated on the plans.
Perfect.
So, yeah. The same as before, just the idea of the additional under layer of flowering trees.
Yep.
Yep, and then the last one was just our slide from before. We just incorporated in case there was the additional questions.
Perfect. I think we're good with that.
Okay, if there's no further questions for Jessica, this next slide that's on your screen currently is a slide for the construction managers to talk about some of the questions that came up in regard to the work hours and safety measures and contractor parking. And
Okay.
thank you. Dave,
Amy,
are you there?
I'm here. Yep.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself and I'll turn off my mic.
Sure. My name's Dave Cravanzola. I'm the project executive for ONGAP, the joint venture construction manager on the project. So I'm going to talk about a couple of broad points that were asked. One was the construction hours, and the approach at this point is that knowing the drop-off times in the morning and the pickup times in the afternoon, we're looking to stagger the construction hours so that, being that we're sharing one driveway, that we are not having traffic in and out of the construction site mirroring the hours of the drop-off. So, we're looking to maybe doing the hours a little earlier, but still having to be cognizant of noise ordinances, or pushing the working hours a little later so that we get past that. Luke, I think it was 3:15 to 3:45 was the afternoon window, which typically construction sites are 7 to 3:30. So we'd want to push ourselves after that so that the school traffic can be gone before we leave for the day. And as far as I guess before I go on, is there any question about the construction hours?
I think, this is Steve Alvani, I think what our thought process is to give you guys wide latitude in terms of construction hours, because you're going to have the Board of Education and the building committee and the principal of the school. We just want to be able to document it, what the hours potentially could be on the broader level. My only other question to you is there going to be a different kind of construction area when school's in session and when school's not in session, be it the fall and the summer, basically? Our plan is to give you latitude on what you need to do, but it just needs to be documented.
Okay. Well, as far as the working areas, we'll always be, during the school year, we will be working behind the temporary fences and screens that are installed without intermingling with school activities. In the summers, is when, if there is any work to be done outside of the perimeter of the construction fences, we would look to execute that work. As far as...
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay.
All right, so as far as worker safety and security measures, again, our concept here is always to have that clear delineation. So before the work starts, the construction fencing goes up. It'll have privacy scrim on it. There will be some instances where we will erect hard barriers that are typically like a plywood wall that would be adjacent to, say, the main entrance where there's a lot of traffic coming in and out, pedestrian traffic, to make sure that that there's a little added level of barrier between the construction site. And as far as security measures, we write in the contracts where we conduct background checks on all construction workers. They go through a site-specific safety orientation before they're allowed to start work on site. We have head counts every day. We have a no-tolerance interaction policy and monitor other behaviors of the workers. But really, we're afforded the ability, with the way this project is being phased in sequence, where we can have that clear separation between construction activities and operations of the school.
Perfect. Okay.
And
duration? 18 months, 2 years.
I think they're going to get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Was there a question?
I was waiting to see if you were going to tell us the duration. Is the construction period 18 months, 30 months? Do we know at this point?
Yeah, so again, with the approach we're going for with the two phases is that we would be to construct the academic wing that you see in yellow on the screen. That's approximately a 15-month duration, which puts us at completion of that right around January of 2022. And what we would then move the students into the school. We would then start demolition of the existing school, and then we would work to complete the assembly wing and the site work probably with some staggered occupancies. As soon as we can get some of the portions of that assembly wing ready in the late fall of 2022, we will do that. And then we would be looking for a moving in of the rest of the assembly spaces right around January of 2023. And then we would be finishing up some closeout items, and there'll likely be some landscaping work to button up once the winter breaks in the early spring of 2023.
Dave, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So just because it's now been coming up so much about the new normal and social distancing, have you guys thought about that? I mean, because it may be something we have to do, right? And have you thought about what that might look like if we have to add more, I don't know, structures or temporary structures, to accommodate?
So, well, if you're talking about, we've really, of all of our projects, only one in a healthcare facility was shut down during COVID. So as far as what we're seeing for having to construct in the times of COVID, we are adapting to that with respect to providing the services on site for the workers and the protocols so that they can work safely. As far as the pandemic and how it could have a ripple effect here is just, we're one of the things, the next bullet item is about the contractor parking. We've always known that this is a very tight site. So ideally, we want to be parking off-site and shuttling personnel. We always have some parking on site. Usually each trade, their foreman has a vehicle that remains inside the construction area, not parked on the school property. Yes, thank you, Amy. Where they have their readily accessible tools, things like that, and they'll bring some people in the vehicle with them. However, we will need off-site parking. One thing that is that may be up for consideration is if they are continuing to prohibit carpooling. That makes the off-site parking a little more difficult, because then you're asking people to possibly travel by foot to the site. So that's one thing that really it's changing so often, and where we are months away from construction starting, there's really only so much we can plan for that right now. But I'd say that's really one area where the pandemic could impact the way we're logistically planning things.
There will be off-site parking, and I think we'll just leave it.
And everyone, and sorry, and I know it's in advance and it may not even matter, and I'm essential too as a real estate agent, so I appreciate everyone trying to wrap their head around this. Will you have, I know we don't have this, but construction, will there be some sort of health measure for, like, everyone has to wear masks and gloves, and just because there could be crossover with, personnel at the school and, students?
Well, there really will not be. There really will not be crossing of personnel and students. That's one of the things that we set up to make sure that, again, as children are approaching for the day or leaving for the day, that we do not have our traffic coming and going from the site. And we usually, when the project starts up, we are out there monitoring that at the gate to make sure that is enforced. As far as when we have meetings with people who are in the school versus us on the construction site, we'll be practicing all of whatever the policies are for social distancing and control measures at that point, whether it's wearing masks at meetings, if we are meeting face to face. But we'll certainly, our goal is to not have our work activities affect what's going on inside the school.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Go right ahead, Karen.
So, just having, living in the local area, I've sort of been paying attention to what's been going on in Westport, and they've had, while they didn't have to rebuild a building, they've been doing serious remediation of a school building that had issue with mold and had to have, you know, a lot of remediation work done and reconstruction. And they were scheduled to open on time this fall, but the pandemic and the slowdown of workers and the slowdown of supply chain and the reduction of workforce showing up has seriously impacted their deliverables on their construction project, which started 9 months to a year before any shutdown orders in Connecticut. So are we anticipating or planning for any impact on workforce slowdown, workforce not showing up, subcontractor issues, supply chain issues? Is that anticipated and built into this plan?
We are continuing to assess that.
Because it's a good neighbor right next door that's having this issue. And so it's a pretty real-time example of what's going on.
Yeah, I'd say as far as mitigating the workers on site, again, we have a corporate meeting every week with all of our personnel where we're talking about how we're mitigating it, how we're working with the trades to make sure
not corporate.
No,
when there are contractors and subcontractors on site.
Correct.
Right? Very hard with contractors, right? Because sometimes on a building site, as you know, probably much better than I do.
It might delay the whole thing.
It's hard, and sometimes for safety reasons and for OSHA reasons, they can't be 6 feet apart. It's not safe to have a guy by himself doing certain work. Yes?
There are many different approaches to that. There are some spots where it's unavoidable, and then we make sure that they're wearing the proper
right.
so that they can work in those environments. And
have you spoken with other work sites that are similar to this one?
Yes.
Where
yes. Right now,
I mean, Westport had a 30% reduction at times in the workers showing up at Coleytown Middle School.
Yes, we have in the state, whether it's Norwalk to Groton, everywhere we have dozens of projects going on in the state right now, and we are not seeing any crippling changes in manpower. We are dealing with some. We have had some issues with respect to material, especially material that was in some of the states like steel in New York because of how tightly they shut down, and we're adapting to that. We are working with the design team on seeing where we can be cognizant of material selections, trying to keep some materials regionally sourced to prevent the possibility of having not being able to get some of those materials. And we're, from a planning and management standpoint, we've transitioned to virtual planning meetings with the trades to keep them engaged in the project.
I'm thinking about when you go live in construction.
Well, the derivation of the question was the construction period. I think from start to stop, or from beginning to end, your construction period is about 2.5 years.
They've reduced it to 14 months. 14 to 16.
It was 15 months for the beginning, then it ends in spring 2023. So I just want to make sure that we know that it's a 2.5 year build from, if you're starting in November of 2020, you're going to be done in spring of 2023. That's the general time frame we're talking about. If something happens, it gets pushed out. There's nothing we can do about it.
I just want to make sure that we're not giving that we're contemplating the realities, because I think there's a town, 1 or 2 towns over, that is doing a school, not even rebuild, but they're doing a school renovation that is having significant delays.
Understood, but
I think it's not a good thing, but to learn from the real life experiences and the real life challenges is something we should all do.
And we are doing that. We have, like I said, right now we are executing probably close to $500 million in construction work in the state, and we are doing that. We are tapping those resources. We have projects with 130 workers that have continued through this pandemic. We are well on top of it, and the durations that we're talking about in the schedule Based on everything that we know now, we feel comfortable with the installations.
You've had no slowdowns?
We've had some, but nothing, we have not pushed any of our completion dates.
Okay, okay, so I guess the Westport situation is an anomaly.
I don't know enough about it to be able to assess that.
All right.
It's a different construction manager. And just for everyone's edification, that's really a building committee issue, not a P&Z issue.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it is one of our issues, but okay. The amount of time we give a permit for and the amount of time we open up a project to is actually one of our issues, but if you think it's not, fine.
What's next on your list, Amy?
That actually completes our presentation for tonight. I do have additional slides if you had any other questions, but otherwise, those are the bullet points that we had scheduled to review today. Okay. Happy to answer anything else you might have that you feel is an open item.
The other open items that you have, and part of it relates to the stormwater management, we eventually need to get an answer about, I keep saying Mr. Fernando, that's not his name.
No, Francisco is in the east, and the gentleman who sent emails is Alex Strukoff. We'll get to him next week with stormwater management.
Okay, no, the other one. Mr. Francisco, when he spoke last week,
yes,
questioned this sewer line that went from his house through the property.
Yes, I spoke to Amy about that. This is Jeremy Ginsburg, Planning and Zoning Director, and I did speak to the Public Works Department today. All they could find was the connection from Mansfield Avenue to the owner of 381 Mansfield. They were not able to track out anything other than that on their property.
Okay, so there's nothing that
And in addition, we did check the survey, and there is no indication of a pipe running from the property to the east across the field.
Okay, so we'll have to get back to that gentleman eventually and tell him that we don't think it goes. We have no documentation that goes across the construction site now.
That's correct. Nothing indicates that it's there.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Call before you dig. So stormwater management, we're going to take care of that all next week. Building heights, we talked about that. If you could just, at our next meeting, just as a documentation, just make sure we know the exact heights in those various corners of the property, which is the one on the eastern side and then the one in the back corner.
Okay.
So it's going to be the southeast corner and then the southwest corner.
Yep, so I think you're talking about the height of the building here, correct, all the way to grade, right?
Yep.
Not average grade, but grade. Mm-hmm.
Toes to the top of the head. And then also, and then the back corner that butts up against where the back fence is.
Yes.
Which is the gym wing. Okay.
Correct.
Sure, we got that screen detail. We talked about that. What else do I have? Chain link fence. We talked about that. Construction house. We talked about that. Okay. I think. Do you have anything else on your list, Jeremy?
No. The gentleman's name, and I apologize, is Francisco Rivero of 381 Mansfield. Commission members, we emailed you his letter, 2-page letter earlier today. It's dated May 19th. He had outlined a number of issues which Amy and her team have covered, including the ELP playground, the buffer. He talked about 2 other things, lighting and screening of the AC units on the roof. I don't know, Amy, did you want to touch on those briefly?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We presented the site photometrics last week. I don't believe I have that slide here in my deck today, but if you recall, we indicated that there was 0 light spill on the property line in this area. So I think he'll be satisfied that there's no new light spill into his property, and that the new lighting is full cutoff and proper accommodations for scheduling and controls. And the other item was the roof screening. And while I'm not sure of the grade change or the viewing angle that he would have from an upper level of the house, because the house is set higher on the hill than the school building, and this is only a one-story wing of a school where he might be able to view the roof. We do have roof screens on both of the rooftop units on the ELP wing and on two sides of the rooftop unit on this southern area where it says two-story academic pod. So the sides, at least, of the rooftop units will be screened.
Right, and those rooftop units, I think, are set 4 feet back from the parapet.
The roofs, no, they're actually centered, so they're about 20 or 30 feet in from the parapet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Away from the property line. Did we
Correct.
need, one other thing, thank you, Amy. Did we need anything with the engineered walls at this point? No, that's going to be a building department issue later in the game.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, let's go around the horn. I think my list is ready. Jennifer Leahy, do you have any additional questions for Amy or any of the participants at this point?
No, I'm good.
Jim,
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Rand is recused. George Riley, any questions, sir?
Just quickly, because I didn't get the pipe up earlier, where is the staging area for the site?
Dave, would you like me to go back to that other plan?
Just, is it the southeast corner, southwest, southeast?
Yeah, yes. The primary construction entrance will be right around there. Yep, with the field office, and then we'll be staging materials down around to the southeast.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Kara Gately, any
Also,
you good, George? George, sounds good. Kara Gately, any questions?
No questions. It's the same issues they've always been. I mean, I obviously have a concern if we're only going to be examining the survey as to the one neighbor who, or the neighbor who who called in and wrote a letter. I think we need to treat all the neighbors consistently and equitably. Obviously, I think we should look at setbacks and make sure that we're being equitable in our treatment of all the neighbors vis-a-vis the setbacks and the treatment with setbacks. I think the shared entry for construction vehicles, teachers, parents, and staff and buses needs to be considered in terms of safety. And if parents have concerns, I think those letters and those concerns need to be made public and shared with, the commission. I think traffic and entryways is within our jurisdiction and should be something that we're considering. And if parent letters have come in and have not been shared with us, I think they should be. I am concerned with how construction trucks and how we're going to stagger that. It's a very narrow driveway, and I know there's ways, during the end product, I'm very satisfied with the traffic studies and sort of doing the traffic signal, how we can manage that. But I think during construction, I'm concerned with that. And I think I want to make sure that's being handled, especially since parents are concerned about it. Parking, I think Dr. Forshaw, adequately, and the traffic guides, the parking, I think that's been adequately answered. But I think those are sort of my issues.
Michael Galante.
And obviously stormwater management, but I don't think we're dealing with that tonight. I think that's correct?
That's next week, yes.
Okay, those are my issues.
Michael Galante,
Yes, sir.
can you chime in on any of that? Have you looked at this construction plan and there's 3
No, I
layers.
haven't looked at any specific construction plans as far as access and circulation, but I agree with everyone. There is one access drive to the school campus, and there's really no way around that. It's a matter of managing the construction traffic, arrivals in the morning and departure in the afternoon for the construction workers. As far as material deliveries, they'd have to be scheduled to not arrive at school arrival and not arrive or depart at school dismissal. It's going to be a management issue as far as managing that traffic when the school is open during the school year.
I've not seen, I wasn't going to get into it.
But I haven't reviewed any details of that yet. I'm not sure if that's even available at this point.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. That's because, I mean, I understand Kara's concern or Miss Gately's concern. And there's 3 different bodies of traffic coming through the same entrance. I just want to make sure it's managed properly, that's all. Is it something you've looked at before, Michael?
We can look at it, but we haven't at this point, no.
Does it make sense?
Is that within microscope of his?
We can change.
No, it wasn't, but we can certainly add it if the town feels we should take a look at
I
it.
guess it would be up to the applicant to provide it.
But I mean,
to review.
I think, to be clear, it wasn't because initially phasing was different, and so there wasn't going, it was a different.
No, it's always been on the table. It's always there. You're always going to have the three bodies coming at the same time.
Okay.
We got to bounce this one around.
Then it should have been looked at earlier.
Let's move on and we can circle back.
Okay. Next up was Larry Warble. Any questions at this point, Larry?
No questions at this point.
Okay. That's all the commissioners.
Go ahead.
Do we have anything else to add? I mean, we covered all the topics that we have.
No, I would open it up to the public. I have nothing further to add based on what's.
Okay. Is there anybody in the public domain that would like to speak to this application?
You might have to arrow over to see who.
Can you?
I have nothing, Steve.
You have nothing. I have caller 3, caller 2. Jim Rand doesn't count. David Carvosi, Jennifer, Amy Samuelson, Adam Weber. Okay. There's nothing in the chat. No one emailed us. Nobody asked us.
Text.
We have those letters in the mail. Okay. Michael, well, Amy, is there somebody on your team that can comment on the 3 different types of traffic that would be coming through during, a midday of a project such as this?
Well, I can just reiterate Dave's description, and that he and I, or ONG and SLAM, happen to be working on another project, a high school renovation in Woodbury, Connecticut, where there's one entry similar to this instance, where there's only one curb cut from the public road into the site. And ONG has set up their construction trailer within the proper defined zone of construction activity, and they've controlled the timing of both contractors coming and going, and in particular the deliveries. And they also have meetings on a weekly basis with the school principal, and they learn the school schedule. So if there's a special event coming up, in the case of a high school, they've had to lay down and have quiet times for SATs and some other testing that goes on, AP tests, I think. And so ONG is very accommodating, and I know AP is as well. And so I think that the team will work very well with the school district to make sure that there's the least disruption possible insofar as traffic and accommodation for the school to remain active.
Amy, what's the acreage of that school in Woodbury?
That is a much larger parcel. Woodbury is a much more rural community than Darien, and it's a high school, so it has multiple athletic fields and track and the like. So it's hard to compare this situation, but in terms of access to the site and your concern about the entry drive, it doesn't matter how large the parcel is if everyone has to use the same driveway. So I understand your concern.
Yeah. To the best spot, and so would that be possible on this parcel?
Yeah, I think that the main difference in accommodations here is that they're asking the contractors to do a carpool situation, and they're not allowing the subcontractors to have multiple workers park cars on the site. And I think that's the difference between what I described and this. They
do that at Woodbury?
No, correct. In Woodbury, there was parking accommodated on some tennis courts that were not in use. Yeah, but the entry drive, I think, is the concern. I agree with your concern, and I have seen it in action that the deliveries are not in conflict with the school entry and exit times.
I think what we're getting at the end of the day, we're just gonna have to draft some language that says that the principal's got to be involved because he's at the school all the time, right? So you have the principal involved, you have the construction manager involved, and then you have the buses because there's 3 things there. So we just need to figure out who the point person's going to be, who's the ultimate controller of that traffic district. If you have a car coming in, a bus coming in, and a construction coming in at the same exact time. That's at the end of the day, that's what you need. You need one guy that runs it. If it's an O&G guy, or it's a construction manager person, or it's the principal standing out there, or it's a school district, we just have to figure out who that person is. Okay. That's everything that we have on our list. The hearing is going to be left open again for next week. We're going to go over stormwater management. Just so everyone's knowledge, the 2 consultants got back together. They finished up their conversation Thursday late afternoon. So both of them went back to their offices on Friday and on Monday, and today's Tuesday. So we're not going to get the final version until later this week. It's already Wednesday, so we can be able to talk about it tomorrow. Next week. So if anything else pops up between now and then, Amy, we'll make sure that you know in advance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else I'm missing?
No, that should do it. And I guess the question for the commission members here is, if we're just covering stormwater next week, we'll let Mr. Yanis and Mr. Galante know that at this point we've covered the traffic and parking issues, unless a commission member wants them next week or if something comes up in the interim.
Okay. Yeah.
Certainly if a neighbor letter comes up or a question or whatever it is.
Yeah. So at this point, Michael Galante and Greg Yanis, if he's there, he works for the other committee. If we need you, we'll let you know. Michael.
It's on my schedule.
Thank you, sir.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're done for tonight. Okay.
And this is, so it'll be officially continued to Tuesday, May 26th, 8 p.m. And we'll get the GOTOMEETING information out on the agenda, and we'll put it on the town website this Friday afternoon.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. Fred, you want to make sure you text
Mr. Rand's there.
Mr. Rand? Do you pop in?
Yes. 9:10.
There he is.
My only concern is if the chairman thinks I matter now that I'm here.
Yeah.
That was MATT, not MADD, right? Next item up. Continuation of public hearing regarding the coastal site plan review number 165A, flood damage prevention application number 173A, Lawrence Stevens, 14 Raymond Street. Jeremy.
Sure. You may recall that the applicant, represented by John Hiltz, was instructed to go back and work with the Army Corps State DEP and the 5 Mile River Commission to kind of respond to issues presented by the neighbors. He has done so. We expect he will be ready to present his application next week, which is Tuesday the 26th. So we're going to continue the public hearing to that date and time, which is a week from today. Again, with the go-to meeting to be posted on the town website, or people can call our office to get that information. But that hearing will be continued to next Tuesday, May 26th, 8 p.m.
Okay.
Jeremy, could I ask a question, please?
Sure,
Of course you
sure.
can.
Are we going to have, will you have some communication with or from the 5 Mile River Commission, the Corps of Engineers, the yada, 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 so that we know, independent of what the applicant says, what their position, and if they've resolved something, can we have confirmation from them that they and the applicant have resolved something?
Yes, actually, Jim, in your packet this upcoming Friday, all the commission members are going to get a copy of the latest from each of those agencies in writing. And those will be put in your packet one way or the other. They will also be posted to the town website.
Thanks.
Is there a preliminary thought process of how this is going to go?
Still working it out in terms of how it's going to go next week.
Okay. Any other commissioner have questions on that application? Because we're going to move on. Okay, hearing none. Okay, that's the end of the public hearing. Now we're going to go to the general meeting. Deliberations only in the following: coastal site plan review number 213C, land filling and regrading application number 186A, special permit application number 311, 20 Juniper LLC, 20 Juniper Road. The hearing was closed on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 2020. If you remember, this is the house that's under construction with the garage that's under construction with the new pool that's done. And the biggest item here, what was the two items? One item was the gate.
We talked about the gate and the pillars adjacent to the land trust property. That was one issue that seemed to be resolved when they pushed the pillars further back. The other issues were related to the plantings and the screening of the court, both on the south side and the east side. And third was really the lighting and the hours and usage, if you will. So those are the three, seem to be three issues there.
Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the application and the applicant was fully documented. You know, we have a couple of these lighted courts in town. Some people have tennis courts that are lighted, that are not permitted. Some people have pools that are lighted. We do have a hockey rink in town, or a couple of hockey rinks in town that are lighted. I think the applicant did a good job in screening the property. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be a major disruption. The photometric study looked to see there's not a whole lot of leakage, and we also have, most of us I think are familiar with this, with the lights of the high school, because we know how that came out. But let's go around the horn. Jennifer Leahy, you want to start off with your?
I have no problem. I thought the screening was good. We went over all over the light. I don't think it's going to impact neighbors any more than, I don't think it will impact neighbors.
Okay. Jim Rand, you're up next.
I have no further questions, no comments.
Okay, George Riley.
No issues.
Kara Gately.
Hi, sorry, I'm just like unmuting myself. I appreciated that the applicant and the homeowner were so flexible about hearing the concerns of neighbors and the commission, and that they adjusted their plans. They went from competitive grade lighting, they reduced the height of the poles, they reduced the number of, light poles they had. They went from competition to recreational, and they added, more screening. They sort of listened to the neighbors on the over the riverside, while they were more than 100 feet away, that they still could have been impacted. And I think I definitely appreciate that they heard those neighbors and their concerns and, listened to them and adjusted the plans accordingly. I also appreciated that the applicant and the homeowner agreed to a time reduction that they were originally asking for and to put a timer on. And I think a timer in this situation, that they're probably the residential home with lights that I know of, they have the longest, the latest amount of time than anyone else, but they have a timer on it so that neighbors aren't forced to have to self-help and get involved to enforce it, which I think no neighbor, especially now, wants to deal with. So I really appreciate the applicant and the homeowner, addressing that and being willing to put on a timer. So I have no other issues.
Okay, thank you. Last but not least, Larry Warble.
Yeah, I'm going to echo the appreciations as well too, especially the fact that they agreed to put up some screening. I think they mentioned in the first meeting that screening works both ways, and they're going to sacrifice some of their view of the water by having the screening. So very appreciative of that as well, that they did that. And just for my recollection, I know we went back and forth. Where do we end up on the timing? Did we say that they'd be?
I'm going to get to that next. Yeah.
Do we get that next? Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we're clear on that one point.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm good.
Okay. So, Jeremy, the owner, it's in the minutes, right?
Correct.
The owner of the property said that he would, using Wilder's word, stipulate to a certain time?
That's correct. In the minutes, which are also in your packets, the property owner suggested no later than 11 p.m. on weekends and federal holidays and 10:30 p.m. on weeknights. That was what the owner put forth, which, as you acknowledge, Kara and Larry, is a reduction from what I think originally Wilder Gleason had talked about midnight, and the property owner came forth and, I'll call it, self-reduced that, if that's what.
But he also said that, and that was per with a timer.
Yes, the use of automatic timers was agreed to.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure, because that's an extension of time that I'm not aware of a homeowner who has that time that he has. I don't think Manellas do.
I can tell you that other clubs have.
You're not a club. Let's talk about residential. Do the Manellas have the same time?
They have a stop time, yes.
What time is their stop time?
I don't remember. It's in the file. I have to take a look. I know Fred and
It's not allowed.
Right. But certainly
So I think, and why I was comfortable is that they're having an extension of time. They're getting more time, right, later PM, but there's a timer so that neighbors don't have to get involved and have to can you turn this off? And so it's a self-enforcing thing. And that's why I think I'm comfortable from a neighbor and a intensity of usage perspective.
They're asking for 11 p.m. on weeknights and holidays and 10 o'clock on weekdays. In my opinion, it should be 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock.
Let me just interject real quickly here. It's my recollection, based on the proposed changes in lighting that were presented by the applicant at the let's say the second iteration of the public hearing, that based on the changes that they were proposing for the lighting, that they were just going to go with 11 o'clock 365 days a year. I may be wrong about that, but it may all be something that we need to confirm.
Yeah, no, the guy Paul stepped in, and it's in the minutes. We have it the other way, Fred.
Yeah.
And you typed them up. So he said 11 o'clock on weekends, 11 o'clock on weekends and holidays, and then 10:30. I think 10:30 is too late. I think 10:30 is too late in the school night. So I would say 10 o'clock on 10 o'clock on school nights, 11 o'clock on weekends.
But with a timer?
Yeah, they all have timers.
I agree 10 and 11.
Not everyone has a timer.
So what, Larry, do you have an opinion on time, since you asked it first? No, you're on mute, there you go.
Looking for my mute button, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm actually okay with the 10:30 for those times. They're so far away from everybody else, and they've screened it to death.
Okay.
You know, I feel it's their home, it's their property. You know, I feel okay about that.
Jen Leahy, any question, any time thoughts?
I'll move with the motion of how everyone feels. I do like that. Is there talking about 30 minutes? Like, what were the times that they put in? Sorry, Steve. Is it 10:30 and 11?
10:30 and 11.
I mean, okay. Like, I feel like the 30 minutes are not gonna. That's fine.
But Steve, you're proposing 10 and 10:30.
Correct. I said 10. I said 10 and 11. They said 10:30 and 11.
I'm okay with what they asked for. If you want 10 and 11, if everyone's swayed that way, I feel like I'm with Larry.
You're only the second person. What do you think, George? Do you care?
Desperately. And I agree with Larry. I think there's plenty of screening, and we're almost bidding against ourselves. I haven't heard any objection from anybody about 11 and 10:30, so I'd stick with that.
Jim Rand?
I'm okay.
You're okay with 10:30 and 11? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm getting outvoted so far. Kara Gately, you have any opinion?
I mean, I always have an opinion, but
it's a yes or no question.
It's a half an hour. I mean, I'm more concerned about the screening, which is what I think the neighbors were concerned about. And like I said, with a timer to shut it off so that it's not where neighbors have to get in fights and get involved with like, can you get your lights off? So, I mean, 30 minutes.
Okay, leave it. Forget it. 10:30 on weeknights, 11 o'clock on weekends.
Okay, Fred and I will draft something up based on the comments we've received tonight.
Yep.
We'll have a draft resolution ready for next week.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Next thing, on the agenda, I had Jerry put on discussion of this additional opening of the town again. I'm really happy about this opening of the town. I hope that the restaurants do open tomorrow night. I probably will not go out to a restaurant tomorrow night, but I hope they do open. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order. In your packets, we did get a bunch of different restaurants are going to open. We definitely know that Sugar Bowl is going to go. They're not having tents. They don't have many issues.
That's correct.
Giovanni's has been all over Jeremy and us, and I do have to do a quick, I want to go a little bit out of order, but I'm going to nix my chairman's report probably later, is Jeremy and Fred and Dave Keating and Peter Solon are working their tails off to get this thing done. And me personally, I think these guys are the hardest working guys in town hall right now. And we owe them a debt of gratitude for what you're doing because their staff isn't here, it's just them. I've spoken to Jeremy more in the last 2 weeks or last month than I have in probably the last 2 years in the 7 years I've been in the commission. But be that as it may, the Black Goose got approval last night.
Later tonight.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah, I know exactly. It's not the Black Goose. They're going to put a tent up on the municipal lot. 1020 is going to take half of their parking lot and put a tent up there. The one thing that I want to get into in a second is relative to the tents. If you're going to put up a tailgating tent that says like New York Jets or New York Giants or Patriots on it, you can put it up and take it down. If you're going to get a Stanford rental tent, that is like something you'd see at a wedding. The town requires a building permit. So some of these things, which is a step that I personally missed, needs a building permit to be able to put a tent up, because when a storm comes ripping through in July, a thunderstorm, if it's not held down properly, this thing can go away. I mean, the biggest tent that I know that's public in town is the one that's always at the Pear Tree Point Beach when they have the Jogathon, and the night before is that rocket party. So that's what we allowed these guys to have these tents up from, this week until Labor Day. So it's got to be secure, and that's why they need building permits. Rory's is in here, there's a bunch of other ones. But moving on to what is really important on the agenda, the next phase of this reopening is the retail stores.
Not the next, can we just be clear on this? It's not the next phase. It's the same order. It's the same phase. Retail stores can, they can go outside on the same day as restaurants.
Right, the way we're handling it though, Kara.
I know, but can you just explain to me, because I'm confused, where in the order and where in the governor's sectors, the economic, department, where do you see a next phase that retail is secondhand to restaurants?
No, I think what Steve...
I don't see that guidance.
It's not a phase. I misspoke, sorry.
So we have to be careful, because I think if retailers, those are small businesses who are struggling just as much as restaurateurs, and their staff is struggling just as much. So I think to say that the next phase is making it seem like they're not getting the support from the town that other businesses are. I think we can be really careful not to do that.
I think what he meant to say, Kara, was the next item that the commission needs to cover. Last week you guys covered restaurants, allowing me to work it out with restaurants. What we're talking about tonight is the possibility of the commission giving me the authorization to work with retail stores similarly.
But let's be clear, they are no further behind in priority or in phasing than restaurants, because they're not.
That's correct. The only thing they're behind on is the commission saying, please work it out, and et cetera. Phasing wasn't the right word. It's the commission working on...
zoning regulations have been kind of like... Anyway.
I am not aware of anybody who cares what phase we're calling it between retail.
I am. I very much am.
Really? Okay.
Yes, retailers actually were kind of like, why are we considered second phase in Darien when restaurants aren't?
When was that term ever used before tonight? I never heard of it.
Phasing? You haven't heard any governor talk about phasing? Phase
Not
one.
in terms of retail and
reopening
restaurants.
states and reopening regions of states, phases?
As of May 20, it's all one phase, right?
Yes.
There'll be a second phase later.
In Connecticut? No, it's not.
There will be a second phase later, but right now there's a phase that starts tomorrow.
There are phases. So to say...
Okay, never mind, we're spending too much time on that.
Yeah.
I know, but...
This is what I'm asking. This is what I'm asking. Okay? I would like to authorize Jeremy to allow retailers and staff to allow retailers, if they want to put up a tent in their backyard for retail purposes. We've been reached out by certain not major retailers, small retailers. One in specific is the DCA. The DCA wants to put some kind of tent out in the back. They've not...
Back or front, it was unclear.
It was unclear.
Might be back, I don't know.
Yeah.
But certainly people have approached, the chamber has approached and talked to us. Certain retailers, as Steve said, have approached. And certainly that's the question for the commission tonight. How do you want to handle that aspect, the retail aspect?
So the way I look at it, there could be two ways. If Bobbles wants to put a tailgating tent that says Jets or Giants up front in the morning and sell their wares outside and take their money outside, that's fine. If, the DCA or the Darien Sports Shop want to put a permanent tent outside, that's something that Jeremy has to look at relative to parking, and the building department has to look at depending on the size of the tent.
Can I ask you a question?
Hold on, Kara, hold on. Okay, hold on. So we have not seen any specific proposals relative to that yet, but I wanted to get anybody's feedback on that and allow Jeremy to approve it. The other thing that I've been requested on is at some point in time closing roads and closing streets, so you can have an outdoor sales, similar to like a sidewalk sale, but on a grander scale. I don't really know how you do that, and I don't know how much we have to get involved, but I envision it as something like the Memorial Day Parade, when the town gets shut down and you put up stuff. The Chamber of Commerce has their sidewalk sales twice a year. One is in July.
That's correct.
One's in July, and they may want to move it earlier.
Or later.
Or later. So that's where we're looking at. Anybody have any quick questions or reactions to that? And Carrie, you can go first.
Sure. I mean, as I read the governor's order, I don't see how retail stores are treated differently, especially non-essential retail stores, than restaurant establishments, except for the fact that in a practical reality, they don't serve alcohol to go. So, and there's less health concerns. So I'm not sure why we would spend more time worrying about a store selling, gifts or books or other kind of wares than we would be concerned with a eating establishment where the health department would be concerned selling food to go and food outside and people drinking alcohol outside. And I think we were all very comfortable with that, and I'm very comfortable with that, if the health department and the fleet and other people are comfortable with it. So I think retail is almost an easier consideration.
100% agree.
In my opinion.
I'm 100% agree. I'm just asking if it's a yes or no.
And I'm a yes, and
Okay,
I think it's
fine.
an easier
That's great.
consideration.
That's great.
Okay.
That's great.
Because I mean, there's no distinction in the governor's order about it. And in terms of the guidance issued by his departments, the sector that they're in is a less regulated sector than sectors that serve food and mixed drinks and alcohol. So we're spending more time on the less regulated part of the sector of this order. So I think it's a go, and I think we should just be as enthusiastic as we were for restaurants.
That's fine. The reason why I called it stages or phases, whatever it is because when I prefaced it, Jeremy and Dave Keating and the building department and Fred were getting overrun with these requests. So after we figure out how to do, they figure out how to do all the restaurants, then we can do the retails next. So that's the point.
Restaurants have been open the whole time, generating revenue, and retail hasn't. So they're suffering.
Kara, I got it. I understand what you're saying. I heard it. Kara, I heard you.
Don't be angry with me.
I heard you.
I'm just stating it.
I heard you. So does anybody else have any questions on it? I'd like to put some kind of time limit on this that doesn't go on forever. The restaurants, we said go to Labor Day. Do we care?
Why would it be the same?
We don't care. I think we should do it the same way as we're doing the restaurants.
Okay.
I think so.
Same, everything. Just tell Jeremy to go ahead. Jeremy and the gang to go ahead.
Larry, you the same?
Yeah, I'm the same. Just more for my edification, quick question. Lamont allowing people, I got a little feedback there, sorry. Correctly state, is His Excellency allowing customers into retail establishments? I thought I saw that they had, the 6-foot spacing throughout that they could go inside as part of the space. No?
I'm not super familiar with it.
Everyone's saying no, I saw.
I mean, I'm not super familiar with it,
Yeah,
but I know.
no, I'm all for giving them all the tents and everything. I just not as much whatever they need. My reading was, and I just trying to pull it back up to confirm. It looked to me like they were going to be allowed to operate, and they may not need to.
Correct. You're 100% correct. You're 100% correct. But some people have asked to put tents on the outside. Like in specific, the DCA doesn't want people going inside their building.
Was it one to reduce?
So because that's why they want to put a tent outside, and they want to make sure they have permission.
Yeah.
So Larry, I think a lot of it is, right, the governor has delegated the specific guidance to different agencies under his purview, and they've issued guidance per sector, right? So there's essential workplace, safe workplace guidance, and then there's the sector guidance. And they have to reduce by a certain amount of, patrons within, so the people like, so there's stuff that goes on at Trader Joe's.
I read it. I just want to make sure I was reading it correctly. Yeah.
Their insurance they're gonna have insurance issues if they don't have tents.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
George, any opinion, sir?
Yeah, just quickly, I think there's a distinction between how dining and retail is being handled, because retail can go inside at 50% of their, building occupancy rate,
Right.
while dining has to be outside. I'm all for if tents are useful to retail, that's okay, but be sensitive to all the parking spaces being used up. There are a bunch being used up by dining outside of the Goose and CVS I saw. So if you put a bunch in front of Baubles and that string of stores, at some point, where's the parking gonna go? But
Understood.
I leave that to others. I would not want to stop it.
And understood. In front of Bobbles and in front of Helen Hansen, those guys, that's all private property. If you're going into the municipal lots, which is behind CVS and behind the Goose and behind Bodega, that's municipal. That's where the selectmen step in. But that's why we're having this discussion. That if.
All right, but isn't it a change or some impact on the use if they put a tent up and
Yes.
stop parking in front of
Yes.
Baubles and stuff?
That's their
I'm not sure it's a bad thing, but we're going to run low on parking at some point.
Right. I mean, if Darien Sport Shop wants to put a tent outside, they need permission. Jen, any questions?
Wait, who, I'm sorry, I missed that, Steve.
Darien Sport Shop. Jen,
So they'll need an application approval and no one else will?
What I said at the beginning, if you heard what I said at the beginning, if they put up a big tent that's permanent, they need building department.
That, I know, I just
And for
couldn't
the
tell.
building, for the
You
building,
specified what kind of tent, I'm just trying to clarify.
and for the building, if it's a big tent, they need a building department, and if they take up a lot of parking, they need Jeremy.
And is the building department approving those permits?
Yes, there's temporary tent permits are no charge. It's just a matter of the tent company filling out the paperwork and giving it to the building department so they're aware of it. So there's been a number of tents approved as part of the new restaurants. So for example, Giovanni's got a tent permit.
Yeah, Darien Diner, there's a bunch of them. They're all over town,
Darien
Nino's,
Diner,
we can all see them all.
Yep. So it would be similar for retail, where you're putting up that type of tent, you would need a temporary tent permit. You might not be putting up a tent of that size, but you would still need P&Z approval through staff, so we know where you are and what's going on. And we've been very flexible in terms of approving those. And if you're gonna be putting retail sales on town property, I'll work with Jamie Stevenson, who has been given authorization by the Board of Selectmen to approve such.
On municipal
On town
lots.
land, that's correct.
Hey, Jeremy,
Yes, Larry?
quick clarifying question, because I'm just scanning through some of these state documents as we were talking here. The 50% rule, are we reading that to apply for sort of like the indoor of retail? I guess what I'm wondering is, a restaurant puts up a tent in a parking lot that's never had any, like 50% of what?
Well,
Yeah, that's what we talked about that on the other ones. We didn't put any percentage on the outside stuff.
right, Larry, I've been working, it's a good
So
question.
I'm just wondering if it's for other places as well too, like the country clubs. Like, did anyone who already has outdoor seating, did they have to do 50% of what was existing already, or can they just keep 6 feet away and they got it?
No, the health department, we're working on all the applications with the fire marshal, the health department, and the building official. So certainly the health department is checking to make sure that the seats are 6 feet apart. There's no more than I think it's 5 people to a table. There's a whole number of different parameters. And Larry, you had mentioned another one, which is related to the amount of other seating. I have not seen what any of the country clubs are doing. relative to their properties yet. It could be up in my email tonight or tomorrow. I have not seen those yet, but certainly the health department is looking at a number of factors to make sure they comply. Restaurants do have to self-certify. There's a website that the state has provided that restaurants have to quote-unquote self-certify.
Great.
Well, now, anyone who, he expanded today the definition of public health facility, which, broadens the group of people who have to self-certify. But in terms of the 5 people at a table, so if there's 5 people, say if there's a family who goes out to eat at a restaurant, and it's a 6-person family.
Yeah, I can't go. I noticed that. I can't go. I have 4 kids.
That makes no sense. They live in the same house.
That was exactly my question to the health director earlier today.
Sure.
I said,
You're telling me if one of my sons can't go to dinner?
Nope.
That was my question to the health director. And that's what he said. He said
That's
that's
true.
not, he said that's just the way it, now, could it be modified in the future? Yeah, but that's just his reading of the document. It's not my reading, and it's not mine
Federal
to enforce.
definitions of family status? I don't know.
Well, look, I didn't write it.
Well,
As a family status with more than 5 people, I can't go to a public establishment, but other families can?
Nope. I can't have 6 people on my boat either. Same thing with boats. Anyway, so Jennifer,
But a boat's not a public establishment. A public establishment is a very different kind of entity than a private boat.
Well,
you still can't put 6
I mean,
people on a boat.
Steve, I agree with you. It's ridiculous. But
Jen, any questions?
can I bring them in my car?
Fluid. This is a fluid situation, and we have to do everything in our power to help every business survive it. It is not normal. If we come into parking problems, we're going to figure them out as a team, and we're trying to do our best effort. My view is that I want to do everything I can to help everyone survive this.
Okay, last question. Do we want to put a time limit on these outdoor tents for these things? We did the other one to Labor Day.
Labor Day, right? What did we say, Labor Day or June? July? What is
No, just let it until this ends.
Well,
Same as
when's it end?
restaurants.
Larry, you're saying,
Yes.
Larry, you're same as
Same
restaurants?
restaurant.
Same?
Yeah, whatever our consent, I'm very comfortable with it being completely open-ended until we decide, hey, it's time to go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to make it Labor Day and then we have to do a vote in August to extend it, okay, but why don't we just make it open-ended?
You
Get to like October, and then when the weather's
You have to have an expiration date.
whatever.
All right. So we do the same
Right,
thing.
then Labor Day.
All right, so we're going to make a proposal. Someone can just read the proposal.
Wait. Sorry, I'm just going to use a little logic. Why don't we do it before public school opens? I know Labor Day.
Jen, what
But
is it for restaurants?
What?
We should do the same that we did for restaurants.
Yeah, you're right. No.
We can always extend it. We can
What?
always extend it.
Yes.
All right, so the proposal on the table is to allow staff to approve any tent requests that come in from retailers outside of restaurants to be able to put up what they want, subject to their approval, and if they need a building permit, they need a building permit.
until the same time frame as restaurants.
Same time frame.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Do I have a
Karen.
second to that motion?
Karen Gately?
Carrie Gately. I think Larry Warble, I think, made the motion, because I'm the chairman, I didn't make it.
I made the motion.
Thank you, all those in favor?
Motion to save retail in
There
Darien.
you go.
Yep, 6-0.
Yeah.
The next thing is the chairman's report. I'm just excited that we're getting this thing open, we're moving the ball forward. And I want to just say it again for the third time or second time, that I appreciate Jeremy, Fred, Dave Keating, Woody's working a little bit, and
Yeah, it's really coordinating with the other town departments to get this all pulled together very quickly. You know, a lot of them are, as I said, later tonight. We got to send a couple others through. The tent companies have been good in terms of getting permits, and you may see more restaurants opening a little further down the road with some more outdoors, but at least for this week we'll have potentially 6 or 8.
Yeah. And I can tell you that the restaurateurs are calling Jeremy, the restaurateurs are calling me, they're calling Jamie, they're calling landlords, And the big problem, one of the bottlenecks now is the tent companies. The tent companies can't get all these tents up in the same amount of time. That's why you're gonna see some before others and people try to slide through. So that's that. That's it, the chairman's report. Okay, moving on to approval of minutes. We have minutes from May 5th. It was a public hearing for 20 Juniper. We went over that. We also talked about the outdoor seating for the restaurants. That's in the minutes. And then Raymond Street just got extended again. Let's go around the horn. Jennifer Leahy, any questions, comments, edits to the minutes?
Nope.
Nope. Jim Rand? Any scrivener's errors?
Here, I have no comments.
George Riley?
No, sir.
Kara Gately? Larry Warble?
Nothing.
Okay. Motion to approve the minutes as drafted. I think Kara Gately's got her hand up.
Motion?
Jennifer Leahy seconded it. Your hand was like this, Kara. You were doing something. There you go. All those in favor? There you go.
6-0.
6-0. That's it. Next thing is special meeting, nothing else. Just one thing I did forget, I do have an OPC meeting tomorrow, so anyone wants to say anything about the OPC meeting tomorrow, you can text me and I'll bring it up. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Ooh, I knew it was going to be Larry. George Riley hasn't been game yet. George Riley seconded. All those in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
9:47.
See you next week.
See you next week, guys. Sign it off. Thank you, 79.